Evening, everyone, or morning in my case, but evening everyone else. Yeah, I was thinking, I've done quite a few demos, so I'm thinking, what else can I do that's different? So I think I thought of something that's at least a little bit different, in some ways at least. So I bought some of these a while back. I don't know how many of you recognise these, but it's a Brazil nut husk. When you get Brazil nuts, they're all in there, and they take those out and sell those as nuts, and this is what's left, and they sell those to unsuspecting wood turners like me. I bought a load of these a little while ago. That's a sort of slightly smaller one, as you can see. I've not found anywhere in the UK that sells them, but so I bought these from Germany. But I think if you Google it, shop around, you might well find them somewhere a bit closer to home, but I've not found any in the UK yet. But the good thing about these is it's almost bowl shaped to start with, and I find them quite interesting to turn. I mean, this one, it looks from the angle of the base that the edge is slightly angled, but all I'll do is straighten that up and just flatten the base. I think I've got enough thickness in the bottom to do it. That is one of the constraints with these. You've got a limit on the wall thickness, so your shape's got to follow what's there. So that does constrain you somewhat, but I've turned them in the past and they look interesting, so I thought it's something interesting to have a go at. So that's the plan. We're going to turn one of these, turn the outside, put a spigot on the bottom to hold it, and then turn the inside and then remove the spigot. So that's the plan, and I'll move over to the lathe and we'll continue from there. So I've got the set of gripper jaws on the lathe here, and my plan is just to grip from the inside. I've got a bit of flicker going on there. Hopefully it'll settle down in a minute. So I'm going to grip that internally and just expand the jaws to grip that. And then hopefully that's got a reasonably good grip. These are thick enough to be moderately strong, so I don't think that's going to be a problem in that sense. So that's holding the outside. The other thing I've got here is a center attached to the tailstock. Is that flicker getting too bad?
Yeah, it's flicking pretty good.
Yeah, let me just see if I can. I think the problem there is where I've got the cameras plugged into a USB hub. So I'll just try reconfiguring a few things. I'm going to probably go quiet for a minute because I'll have to unplug my audio to do this. I'll switch the audio on one of the cameras around. Actually, no, I'll ditch that camera and move this one, and that might just do it. So I won't lose the audio, but you're going to lose the camera for a second. Let me just swap a lead, see if this fixes it.
Whatever you did, this one here stopped flashing.
Well, I just need to go back into OBS and reconfigure that camera. Right, get it off that. Right, hopefully that's actually functioning. Yeah, we've got video there. That looks a bit less flickery, so. Oh yeah, there's the other camera. Yeah, that looks better. We'll go with that. Still hear me okay?
Yes, looks good.
Good, okay. All good to go then.
So we just, yep. Okay, we got you now. Yep.
Yeah, I've got sort of more cameras than I need plugged in, so I've just unplugged one and shunted that one onto another input, so I'm not getting the two on the same hub. So that seems to have sorted it. Yeah, go back to what I was saying here. I've mounted the Husk on that set of gripper jaws internally, expanded into the opening to grip that. Here I've got a live center, but this one, you might notice there's no point. I've actually ground the point away, so I've got a ring center without a point. Because the material here is moderately thin, I'm using that without the point, so I'm not penetrating deep into the surface. So I'm just going to put the shallowest of marks into that once I've flattened the foot off, but I'll flatten the foot off first before bringing the centre up. So first job is to set my tool rest across the bottom here, just below centre, and I'm going to bring a spindle gouge in here and just flatten off the base here. You could probably do it with a bowl gouge, but I tend to use spindle gouges on the outside of smaller bowls anyway. So we're on a fairly small diameter. I mean, that chuck's a 4-inch chuck, so we've got about a 4-inch bowl there. So I'm just going to take off enough to flatten the base. We'll see if that's enough. A little bit more, that's sort of halfway. If I do that, you can see the other view as well. I was setting all my cameras and equipment up earlier, and I usually have a tablet mounted on the lathe, also signed in, and that's what I use as my remote monitor. Basically, my laptop's just off to the side of the lathe, so I use the tablet as my remote monitor, and I switched that on, tried to connect it to Zoom, and it said it was an out-of-date version. Went through the update process, and it says the tablet's too old, it won't update it. So I've switched my remote screen here. I've used my phone instead, so I've got a slightly smaller screen, but I can still see what I'm doing. Right, so I think that's probably enough of a flat there. When I reverse this, I've already sort of figured out what I'm going to do in terms of grip and jaw sizes, etc. I've got another lathe, another chuck here with the Axminster O'Donnell jaws. These are 1.5-inch jaws, so I've set up some dividers here for the diameter of the spigot. Let me hold it that way. There, so I'll set the dividers there to the size of the jaws. There, that's 1.5 inches, so that's what I'll be using to hold this when I'm doing the inside. So I can use my dividers on the rest. I'm just going to bring that rest up just a little bit. Left foot on the rest, right point just waving in the air. Just to scribe a circle, the diameter of the spigot. Now you've probably heard this umpteen times already, but you don't want the right point touching the rest, because on the back side of the wood it's going up, and if the right point touches it, it'll throw your dividers up into the air. So left point on the rest and left point in contact with the wood only. So that has made a mark there. I don't know how well you can see it, but I can, which usually helps. I've got a pencil here, so I just define the line there with a pencil, so you can probably see it a little better then. It's just about got to the edge of the flat that I've created. So I've only just managed it there, but I think that's enough. Now those jaws I'm using are fairly shallow jaws. They are just a whisker under 5 millimeters, so 3/16 of an inch. I'm just setting a depth gauge to that dimension. So I've got a depth gauge here. That is set to 3/16, the depth of the jaws, so I can check my spigot isn't too deep using that. Now I can carry on with a spindle gouge here, or I could switch to a parting tool or something else if I preferred. And I'm just going to take away enough of that material here to make a shallow spigot that's less than 3/16 deep. And by angling my gouge and angling the bevel in slightly, then I can create a dovetail just off the gouge without using any other fancy tooling. So I can check my spigot depth there, and it's about 2/3 the depth of that depth gauge, so I can go a little bit deeper. This is quite hard material, so I think strength-wise, it's probably not too bad, but I'm also bearing in mind that it isn't wood. It doesn't have the same grain structure, so it might behave in a slightly different way. Although it appears to be hard, it might not have the sort of the linear strength that you get from the grain in wood, where it's stronger one way than another. This might be not quite so hard. So that's roughly cut the spigot. Now, from that point, if I think I need it, I can bring the centre in. But even if I don't need it, I'll bring it in and just make a mark there. It's not costing me anything to leave it there at this stage, so I'll leave it as it is and start working on the outside of the bowl now. So set the rest up. We've got a slightly irregular surface there, so I'm just setting the rest far enough back and spinning the piece before I turn the lathe on to make sure there's no bit sticking out that's going to catch me out.
Hey, Paul, couple questions. Does the nut husk have a smell to it, and is it brittle?
In terms of smell, you're probably asking the wrong person because my sense of smell's pretty bad.
That's how I am.
I can't smell anything of it, but it's probably quite old and dry, so whatever smell was there is probably long gone. So no, nothing really of note. I mean, some wood, yeah, I could say, yeah, that smells of this or that. I can't smell anything with this, either from the other one I've got or from this one as I turn it. No real sort of strong smell of anything really. No, nothing at all.
And then how about, is there any particular grain direction? Is it end grain, side grain, burl?
I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't think this has a grain in the sense that you get with wood. But when you see this surface turned, you will see some sort of patterning and variation in colour, and that is possibly due to the direction of growth of whatever it is. I mean, I hesitate to call it wood, but it's obviously organic material of some description and works like wood, but strictly speaking, it isn't. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's potentially it hasn't got the uniform grain that wood has, but. Yeah, we'll see it. We'll see what sort of appears as I cut through it. Any other questions?
No, you're good. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. So all I'm going to do now is to try and even that surface out. I can see a ghost image as it's turning, so I'm just going to work to that and try and turn some of this away and get to a uniform surface. Now, obviously, at this stage, I need to leave the spigot and a flat just around it as it is, but I could, at the end, come back in and turn a smaller foot. That's a moderately large foot for a piece this size. I've cut some of that surface away. You can see there's still the odd bit, but you can see here, there is, let me just zoom right in here. Move that camera a little bit. How we do it? Let me put that on full screen. Just playing with the focus now. Hang on. Just went past it.
I need glasses now.
Yeah. So that's what I'm seeing on the surface.
Okay.
So there is sort of almost like a fibrous sort of pattern to it. So there are sort of lines that don't go in straight lines. It sort of goes in all sorts of directions. So it's a little bit of almost like a woven mat.
Right.
Ins and outs and all sorts of things. There's still bits here which aren't yet flat. I mean, you could part turn this and leave some of that surface if you like. I'm going to try and turn as much of that away as possible. Let me go back to my other view and I'll just zoom this back out just a little. All right, go back to that. So I'll turn a little bit more away. Now, what I often do with bowls where I want to shorten where I want to shrink the foot size after, is to leave a bit of a step at the bottom, like that. So I'm leaving the flat for the jaws to engage with, but I've raised the bottom of the curve, so that's left me enough material then to follow the curve in and reshape the foot at a later stage. So I'm just sort of thinking ahead there, and that's something I often do with bowls where I want to shrink the foot, just by creating that little step, raise the foot slightly, or raise the base of the curve slightly, and then you can follow that curve in at the point where you turn the spigot away. So the spigot becomes a foot rather than being a completely sacrificial thing that you turn away. You can see there I'm getting apart from this bit here, a more even surface, and there's a little bit there. So I'm going to cut just a little bit more away. So I'll get a little bit deeper into that step and take a little bit more away here. Now I'm following the convention of turning a side grain bowl here, but for no apparent reason, because it's not a side grain bowl. So I'm cutting from centre to edge. As it isn't a side grain bowl, do I need to follow that sort of rule and cut that way? Possibly not. And to be honest, to cut right into the bottom there, it would be easier to cut towards the centre. So I'm going to come in the other way now and do a cut the other direction, just to see if I'll get an equally good finish. Because that is an easier cut because of having the tail stop there in the centre, etc. So I can't position the gauge for a proper push cut. But that's worked fine. It looks as good a finish as cutting the other way. So it looks like I can cut centre to edge, edge to centre, and get equally good results in either direction. So that's good news to me. This bit here, I've still got a couple of inclusions, so I'll turn a little bit more away at that point. Now in turning this, it does feel moderately hard, so I'm not expecting my gouge, the edge, to last that long. I think it's done all right so far, and it's still cutting okay, but pretty soon I'll be looking to swap that for a sharper one. So cut a little bit more away near the centre here. And I'm just trying to get rid of most of those inclusions. You can leave the odd one, perhaps there's little ones here. I'm happy to leave those where there's a tiny one there as well. But I'm trying to get a relatively smooth surface on the majority of it. Where I've finished that cut, I've left a little bit of a step. Well, not so much a step, but definitely a change in direction. So I'll just turn that away. And now I'm working back towards the chuck. So I'm just going to be careful not to actually try and turn the chuck jaws as well. That's never a good idea. So I'll bring my gauge up towards the chuck, just very gently, putting no pressure on it. And at this point, I am sort of sensing that edge has lost its sharpness. So I'm going to switch to another gouge now. So we'll just finish off the last couple of cuts with a freshly sharpened gouge. This one's one of those nice M42 gauges, so that should last a bit longer anyway. So I'm cutting fairly close to the chuck jaws there, but I'm stopping just short of it. Where I've left a little bit here uncut, I'll take that out when I flatten the top of the bowl off. So on the outside you can see I've got a relatively uniform curve, a little bit of a bump just down the bottom there, which I think I'll try and fix now. That's slightly better. Okay. Now, in terms of sanding, I'm going to reverse chuck this to finish the foot. So at that point, I can sand the outside. So I'm not going to sand the outside of the bowl now. I can leave that until I get to the point where I do the reverse chucking on it. So take the tailstock away. That has left a very faint ring there, but it's enough for me to recenter that and to reverse chuck it when I need to. So I can take that out of the chuck there. I mean, that does feel fairly thin, and at the bottom, right down here where you've got these, there's like a sort of 4 ridges and then 4 sort of lobes, probably where you've got a couple of nuts in each of those, I'd imagine. And it does feel moderately thin at that point, so I can't have gone a lot farther than I did. Yeah, like I said, you've got to sort of try and keep within the constraints of what thickness of material you've got, and I think I've just about managed that there. So swap chucks. This one, if I've got my measurements right, should fit. So that's in there, pressing the centre in to get that to seat properly, and that seems a reasonably good grip, which is always a good thing. I'll take the tailstock away now. I'm on a short bed one way here, 24/16, so if I'm working off the end of the bed, the tailstock is probably going to get in the way, so I'll get that out of the way. So set up the tool rest across the face of the bowl now, a little bit below centre. You can see the top edge here I've as yet untouched. So I'll lock the tool rest down, and I'll switch to a bowl gauge. I've got a 3/8 bowl gauge here. So I'll just flatten off that top edge. That's the first job. Just pointing the bevel straight across, taking light cuts, because I've got an irregular surface there. I don't want to go at it too heavy in case the tool decides to grab. So nice even cuts. And all I'm trying to do is to take away that uneven edge and leave a flat edge to the bowl, and that's worked. I've got a continuous edge. That's as much as I need to take away, and it's also exposed how much material I've got beneath that edge and how much I can turn away. So from there I can start turning the inside. Now I'm going to carry on doing that with the gouge. I guess you could also use a scraper on this. I'm going to go with a gouge and bring it sort of the handle right across the bed, pretty much at 45 degrees, so my bevel's pointing straight down this surface here. I mean, on the outside of the bowl, if I put my gouge here, and look on the overhead there, that's the angle at the top of the bowl. It turned in slightly at the top, so I've gone beyond 90 degrees and it's coming in a bit. So that's the angle I need to point the bevel to cut in that direction. So to get my bevel there, you can see where the gouge has got to be. It's right across the other side of the bed. So I've got a dust hood behind the lathe which you can't see, and it's just going to get in my way. So I'm just moving it behind the tool rest so it's out of my way. Okay. Now, if I switch to that one, I'll have that one. Do the other way around. That way around. So I'm bringing my gauge right across. Now I'm trying to do this without standing in front of the camera because it's just behind my right shoulder. So if I move across too far like that, you won't see a lot. So I'm just going to try and keep out of the way. If I don't, just shout. I'll get in the way.
Okay. No problem.
So I'm cutting that in there, and you can see the angle of the tool against the rest. Now at that point, what I could do is reconfigure this completely, because I've got the tool rest running at 90 degrees across the bed, and let me go back to the overhead view, and you can see where the gouge handle is, or the gouge shaft is. It's right across there. What I could do here, and this is what I do on an undercut bowl sometimes, is turn the rest into the bowl. Now on this rest, as you can see on the end, it thins out towards the end. Let
Never figured these damn things out.
Yeah, let's get it in front of the camera there. You see, at this end, it's narrow,
God damn it.
so I can put the
A
rest.
hot mic.
Pardon?
Just telling the co-host there's a hot mic. Go ahead, Paul.
You're muted, Paul.
Somebody hit mute all, which is the wrong thing to do. Paul, unmute yourself.
Okay, got it. Just have to
Thank
run
you.
back to my laptop. Sorry. So now I've set the rest up across the edge here, angled into the bowl, as you can see there. So now when I put my gouge on the rest at the correct angle, I'm almost at 90 degrees to the rest. So it's a more stable support for the cut. So just for this top section, where I'm cutting in and I'm cutting in on that undercut, that to me makes it a more stable position and a safer sort of place to start. Again, I'm going to try and avoid getting in the way of the camera, so I'll come in low. So I'll come in on the edge there, point the bevel straight in, follow that edge, flute at about 45 degrees, cut that in a little bit, and we can see from that first cut just how much I've cleaned up. There's just a little bit of surface here which I haven't touched, but apart from that bit there, that inch or so, the rest of it on there. So thickness wise, I've got 3/16 thickness, so I think I'm gonna do okay on this one thickness wise. I'll cut that a little bit thinner to try and get that last little bit. So coming right on the edge and cut in. See what we've got now. That should be enough. So
Paul, about how fast you turning there?
Sorry?
About how fast are you turning?
About 1500 RPM there.
Okay.
So I'm applying a similar sort of principle. If I was cutting wood, I'd be turning at that sort of speed. I'm working on a 4-inch diameter, so I'm working in this divided into 6,000. So 4 into 6,000 gives you 1500. So that's where I'm getting that from. I mean, depending on who you listen to, it's between 6,000 and 9,000. So I could potentially be between 1,500 to 2,000, let's say. But yeah, it seems to work okay with that. I'm just going to adjust the rest a little bit farther round. Just make sure I'm not hitting the bowl, and then we'll do another cut on that top edge. I think thickness wise I'm okay right on the edge. I'm doing about the top inch currently. And using that as a bit of a guide to see how much I need to take away to get rid of all the sort of internal original surface. So apart from a little bit there, that's more or less clean that up. I mean, on a small piece like this, I could always use a set of calipers, set it to the wall thickness near the edge, and just see that I'm keeping it consistent, and that is thickening up, so I'm on the right side of sort of being cautious there, I think. So I can thin it out a little bit, just come inside the rim and take a bit more wood away, or a bit more material. I keep calling it wood, but really it isn't.
Got a great shape to it.
Yeah, it's cutting quite dusty. It's not giving me big shavings like wood, and again that's still thickening up ever so slightly, but I'm through all of the original surface now, so I don't need to take any more off there. I'll take another very light cut. It is, as you can hear, there's a little bit of vibration there from the cut. I'll take one more light cut, and I'll just put my finger on the outside of the bowl. That might damp it slightly. I've got my shoulder in the way, haven't I? Just duck down a bit.
No, you're fine.
So a little bit less noise there, just because I've got my finger behind the bowl and just giving it a little bit of support, and that damps some of those vibrations. And I've got a cleaner cut there. There was a little bit of ripple from the original cut, but that's a cleaner cut now. Not perfect, but it's certainly within what I'd be able to sand away. So we'll go with that. Right, so I can work on the bottom 2/3 now. So get farther in. I've changed the rest position so I can cut farther on round. And as this is going to end up fairly thin at the bottom, I think, I got the impression that where I was testing it at the bottom, there wasn't a lot of material there. So I'm not going to go too crazy with this in terms of thin, because there isn't that much material there, but it should be enough. So that wasn't the optimum position for using a bowl gouge. I mean, ideally, I want to be as close to the gouge as possible and hold it close in, but because I was trying to dodge the camera and keep out of shot, I was doing it at arm's length. But you see there, I've got 2/3 of the way in, I would say. Let's get a bit more light down here. So you can see I've just got that original surface just at the bottom now. So I think I've more or less hit what's probably the thinnest section. I'm going to take some of that material out of the centre first, because that's where there's most of it, and then work back to take the whole cut. Cut that all the way to the middle.
Hey, Paul, can you explain that gouge?
This one is what I call a traditional gouge, or a straight cut gouge. Let me just switch to this one. I'll put it under here. Hopefully I can show you the tip.
Yep. A little to your...
Just do a refocus on that. Give me a sec. This one's a USB microscope camera, so it gives you really good close-ups.
There you go. But it's once it gets dialed in, you'll be able to explain what I'm seeing.
So what you can see there is that if I put it at 90 degrees to where it was, that probably makes more sense. So there's the flute. Turn it 90 degrees. That's a side view. Still not quite in focus, is it? Let's have another.
Yeah, maybe back off a little bit.
Hopefully that's close enough anyway. What I've got there is it's just under 50 degrees grind on the bevel, but I've left the edge, it's angled back at about half that, so maybe 25 degrees angle there, but it's a straight wing rather than swept back. You see there the wing at the back, you can see it's straight. So as I say, it's what I call a straight grind or traditional grind. No swept back wings, but I find that a very efficient cut for inside a bowl. And that's what I normally use when I'm doing the inside. Now, as I'm approaching the bottom there, I'm just gonna resharpen that gouge. It's starting to just lose its edge a bit. So give me 2 seconds while I just touch that up on the grinder. It wasn't that clear to see on that little USB camera, but if I show you a bigger gauge, thinking about it, let's try this. This is a 1/2 inch gauge, so a little bit thicker. So there's a 1/2 inch gauge, and you can see on that one, there's a double bevel as well. There's the main bevel, and then there's a second bevel, which is just shortening the working bevel. I'm just taking the corner off at the bottom. So see that line where there's that second bevel. The second bevel, I don't know what angle it is, I never measure it, but all I do is knock the corner off after I've created the first bevel. But yeah, that's my usual gauge for doing the inside of a bowl. So sharpen the gauge, I've got a little bit more material to go there. That looks quite interesting with those lobes actually still there, so you could actually leave it, but I'm going to turn a little bit more away. Now what I'm trying to do here is feather in the cut into the existing shape so I don't leave a big step at the point where I start the cut. I think one mistake I've seen the beginners I teach make is they sort of shape the bowl and they want to just hit the bottom and cut the bottom part again, and they angle the gouge in such a way that when they hit the wood, it immediately takes a bigger cut than they wanted, and you create a ridge. What I try to do is come back farther up the curve so the cut isn't actually happening, and then you just push the gauge forward until the angle of the bevel picks up the curve and starts the cut. And that way you feather the cut in from nothing, and you don't leave a ridge at the start of the cut. Now I'm down to sort of 1.5 lobes left, if you want to call it that. So a little bit more to go, but the whole curve feels a smooth and continuous curve because I'm feathering that edge in. So I start farther up than I need to feather it in, and then by the time it's starting to cut, I'm in about the right place. So I probably need to do a couple more cuts. I'm just going to stop and check just to see what's going on there. Yeah, sounds like I've got enough material left there. It's not a huge amount, but it's thick enough. So we'll come in for another cut. And I'm trying to get that gauge to cut all the way to the centre. And when I hit the centre, I want the gauge pointing straight across, so I'll leave the bottom of the bowl flat. Now I've hit the bottom and cleared out the existing surface there. There's a little bit slightly farther up. See it just there on the camera. So I'll take another cut and try and shallow it out before I hit the bottom again. So I don't want to go any deeper than I have. So I'll just take a little bit of material out higher up on the curve, and that's reduced it yet further. Yeah, there isn't a lot there, but and you can hear it's starting to sound thinner. So I'll get my head out of the way. So I think I just about got it there. There's a faintest trace there, but no more than that. So I think that's as much as I need to do with the bowl gouge. Just get rid of some of that. So we've got a complete surface there. Yes.
What kind of chuck and jaws you got going on there? I know you said it earlier, but just to clarify.
It's an Axminster chuck. This is one of the old Axminster super precision chucks. They no longer make these. They stopped making, or they stopped selling them about 10 years ago. They weren't actually made by Axminster. They were made by Toolmex, which I think is a Polish company. But they were always regarded as a very good chuck, very solid and robust. It's quite a deep chuck. And it's based on just a traditional engineering chuck. And I think you can still buy the chuck from Toolmex, but they cost 3 times as much as a wood turning chuck these days. So I think that's why I sort of dropped them from the range, because they were getting too expensive. But the jaws, these O'Donnell jaws, are great for this sort of thing. You've got sort of the smooth surface here and an extended jaw, so you can get in behind bowls and things like that, so they give you good access to the back. And they make these O'Donnells in 3 sizes. This is the medium size. There's a 2-inch, 1.5 inch, and 1 inch. And they used to make a 3/4 inch as well, which I've actually got, but you can't get them anymore.
Nice.
So yeah, I quite like them for little jobs like this. And it also, as well as the dovetail there, you've got a centre bore, which is probably about 1 inch on this 1.5 inch or 1.25 inch maybe. So you've got that centre bore as well to grip something, just a straight smooth bore. And you've got that, all 3 as well. So they're sort of dual purpose in that sense, and quite versatile jaws, I think. So I'm going to do a little bit of sanding here. The inside isn't too bad. Hopefully if I start at 120 grit, that should see me through that one. I mean, being quite a hard material, but it does seem to sand quite freely. So I don't think I'm going to have too much of a problem with the sanding. I've got no torn grain to speak of, because there's no grain, I suppose. So that's quite a decent sort of surface straight away. The bottom isn't perfect, but I'll live with that. Just a little bit more at the bottom. It's not so much the finish at the bottom, but I think where I cut in that earlier cut, I cut slightly too deep at the centre, so the shape wasn't quite right, but I've just managed to sand that to true it up. Now I'm using a 2-inch cloth backed abrasive here. This being a small bowl, if I need to, I can fold that in half, so I've got 1 inch wide abrasive, and where I need to get into tighter areas, that's what I often do with this. I'm just going to drop the speed off a bit. I forgot when I started, but normally I knock about 1/3 off the speed, so I've gone from 1500 down to about 1200, 1100. Just reduce heat. All sanding produces friction and heat. Some materials are sensitive to that, and you get heat checking on the surface and cracks and crazies going on, so we want to try and minimize that. I'll just sand that top rim, and I'm going to sand while I'm here, I think I'll sand the top half of the bowl. Depends on how I reverse chuck it as to whether I can sand all the way to the edge. So just in case I can't, I'm going to, at this stage, sand that top section. And I've just hit that with 180 without going back to 120. And I think that's worked okay, actually. My 180 is wearing out, so I'm going to get a fresh piece, but that's good enough. So I'll come back with a fresh piece. Treat your abrasive like any other cutting tool. If it's not doing it, then get a sharp one. It doesn't last forever. Somebody more famous than I once said, use your abrasive like someone else is paying for it. And I think there's a good message in there. So that's 180 on the outside. The other thing I do, normally I'd be wearing a mask or a respirator. I'm not now because I'll be too muffled, but I've got a little brush here and I just brush all the dust out with that rather than trying to blow it out. Because if you get your head close enough to blow it out, then you're going to blow half the dust back in your face, and any sort of dust isn't really good for you, is it? So if you can minimise that, so much the better. So I'm just concentrating on that top half on the outside. The reason I'm not sanding all of the outside is because I'm probably going to reshape the bottom section. So just worrying about the top 2/3. We'll go down to 320. That's the next one. That's feeling a little bit worn out, so I'll get a fresh piece. I'll get through quite a bit of abrasive, so I'll just buy it by the roll. I used to buy a metre or a couple of metres here or there, but in the end I decided I was probably paying over the odds by buying just a couple of metres. So now I just buy a 50-metre roll, and that lasts me quite a while. But the good thing about having a big roll of abrasive, you're not skimping on trying to make it last when you shouldn't be. You just get a fresh piece when you need it and carry on. I might use a bit more because I've got it at my disposal like that, but I think really in terms of finish quality, that's really what you want to do, to get the best finish you can by not skimping on abrasive and using ones that aren't really sharp enough. So that's looking okay. I've gone to 320. I think I'll stop there. You could probably go finer if you want, but for me I think that's fine enough for this particular project. Now on the inside you could do all sorts of things with finishes. I'm going to keep it simple. I've got some liquid cellulose sanding sealer. Now this, I've got mine in a jar here, coffee jar with the brush in the top. It dries very quickly. I'm just giving it a quick shake to make sure it's sort of all mixed up. The reason for the brush in the jar like this is because it's a fast drying finish. You'd be forever dealing with brushes that have gone hard, but leaving the brush in the finish, you don't have to worry about that. So I'm just coating the inside. This is cellulose sanding sealer and it's thinned a little bit with cellulose thinners. And it's a great sort of base for wax polishes, things like that, which is what I think I'll use on this. I'll just sanding sealer and wax. So give that a coat. I'll do the same on the outside, sort of the top section. It is a fairly fast drying sort of substance, the cellulose sanding sealer, so give that 60 seconds and it's probably dry. And then when that's dry, you can either use 4/0 wire wool, or if you're using a wood that doesn't really go well with wire wool, I use these nylon abrasives, web or web wax or whatever you call it. I've got a medium and a fine there. I do use coarse one occasionally, but not usually for cutting back sanding sealer. That's almost dry. Give it another 30 seconds and I think I'll be there. If you're really impatient, you can run that, put a bit of kitchen tissue in there and burnish it dry. The outside's actually dry already, so I'll just do the outside bit. The inside, yeah, I think it needs a few more seconds. I'm just burnishing that with my fingers, so that's good to go. 4/0 wire wool in there, cutting that sanding sealer back. As a fast drying finish, it doesn't level itself out. You leave brush marks in it, etc. So you want to cut back through any brush marks you might have left and back to the surface of the wood, really. So that's done with the sanding sealer. Put some wax on it. My wax of choice is Renaissance wax, which is microcrystalline. This stuff comes in a little jar, and I prefer that to any of the beeswax based polishes. I've just got a little bit of wire wool caught on the ridge there. There's obviously little bits to catch the wool, or even this, in this case, the nylon applicator I'm using. I'm not going to put wax on the outside yet. I'll do all of that in one go when I finish the outside. So buff that, flip the cloth, buff it again. I find that second buffing usually puts a bit more shine into it. The first time you take off the surplus wax and it buffs it a bit, and then you hit it with another bit of cloth or a separate part and buff the surface there to clean it. I'll turn the extractor off now, and we can also turn the lathe off for a moment. So that's the surface on the inside. You see that's taken a reasonable shine. So what I want to do now is to reverse chuck this. Now, various ways of doing it. I could put that back over some jaws and expand them into it, not this one, but bigger. One of my preferred ways of doing reverse chucking on pieces like this is to use, let me find one here, a piece of wood like this, just a mandrel shaped on the surface to match the bowl, or slightly tighter curved than the bowl, and a spigot on the back. Now this was the bottom of something else that I parted off, so this was a piece of scrap. But I keep a load of these, so when I need one I can make it. Now that, you can see it's too big for this bowl, the bowl doesn't go over it. So I need to find a smaller one, but I have got a bag with a load of different ones in. So I'll have a quick rummage and see if I can find one that does fit. I did keep a couple out and put them to one side. I forgot where I put them there. Where did they go? Oh yeah, I can see them. Right. So I've got a few smaller ones here. Smaller curves. There's this one. This is a bit of ash. Again, just slightly too big. And that one doesn't actually have a spigot. It was off a screw chuck, but I could make a spigot. This one, this is a bit of cedar, I think. That's about right. I can actually get that one in. You can see there it's dropped pretty much all the way in. So that's almost perfect. So I think I'll go with that one. I have got a couple of smaller ones here, but I think, as I say, that cedar one looks about the right size, so I'll go with that. Now I just need to switch jaws because the spigot on my mandrel is cut for a bigger set of jaws, so I'll just put the right set of jaws in. It's actually the first one I used will do it, so I'll go back to that. These are 45mm jaws, or they should be, but they're designed for smaller chucks, so you can actually expand them a bit wider than you should really. I've got quite a big gap there, which is not what I normally do, but just for the mandrel, it's doable. I wouldn't hold a bowl like that. You're losing half the grip. But here we're just using it under compression. So bring my centre back. Now to protect the surface that I've just polished, I want to put something over that. So what my normal pad there is, I've got a piece of non-slip router mat, that goes over the mandrel, and then a piece of kitchen towel, just paper kitchen towel over that. So I make a pad out of the two, over the mandrel, put the bowl over that, and that sort of holds it in place almost. And then I've just got to try and find my centre mark. I'm not quite on it, it's just off slightly, but hopefully if I can jiggle that, get close enough. So I'm just playing with positioning here. I've got it right at the bottom and it's out at the top. I think what my trouble here is that the pad is just a bit too thick and it's pulling it out of its true position. Let me just try and get that. Yeah, sometimes the pad pulls to one side and it just throws the whole thing off. So I'm just trying to true that up again. It's nearly there. I'm trying to get it fairly close. If I was just taking the spigot off, it wouldn't matter quite so much, but what I want to do is to reshape the bottom of the bowl. To do that, I need to be just that little bit more accurate. I think that's as close as I'm going to get. So we'll go with that. And if there's a little bit of a ridge where I blend the two in, I'll have to just work with it. Right, so back to spindle gauge now. Might be better to swap them around that way. You see there's a little bit of a wobble there on the surface of the bowl, but hopefully we can manage that. So where I've got that little step, I think I will try and get that slightly closer, otherwise because I've got it's fairly thin at the bottom, I think I'm running the risk of going through if I don't get that better centered. A little bit. I'm concentrating on the surface of the bowl rather than the foot now, just to get the edge of the bowl running true, but not working yet.
No worries, take your time. It's too pretty to mess up. You got this far so far.
It's getting worse, not better, this. Right, just a little. Get to where I think it's right, and then it disappears. Going farther off the mark. I think that is probably as good as it gets. Right, we'll go with that. We'll sand it from there. So I'll cut that curve in and then turn some of the spigot away into a foot. And then shorten that. Now I obviously can't cut all of that away because of the centre. So I'll take it down to about a ½ an inch. So rather than turn all of the spigot away, I've reshaped that to become the foot. Now because that wasn't quite, I've just gone through there. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of doing. So yeah, it's just gone through where it's gone really thin. But I'll finish it anyway, and we'll carry on as if we were going to finish it. There's a slight edge there, so that's sort of taken the foot down closer. Yeah, it was a bit thin at that point, so I've overshot slightly, but never mind. So where that little step is, I can bring in abrasive and blend it. And sand the bottom half, but I didn't get while it was the other way round on the, holding the chuck on the spigot. So sand the bottom half at 180. See if I've managed to blend that. So I've blended in the edge there. So that's worked okay. And then we'll go down through the grits again. 240 next. On 320. And get rid of the dust. Bit of sand and seed on the outside. Yeah, that side has just gone a little bit too thin, so it's just gone through there, but never mind. Give that a minute to dry. Nearly there. Should do it. Cut that back with the wire wool. And then a bit of wax. This is what they chestnut safety cloth, which is paper, so it tears rather than pulls in. It's not a woven cloth; it's just paper. There's a thicker version of a piece of tissue. It's a bit softer, I think, because it's thicker. And I'll use it over and over again. And when it's fully impregnated with wax, I'll fold it another way and use it some more. And then when that's impregnated with wax, eventually I'll throw it away and get another piece. But I do use it many times before throwing it away, actually. So that's buffed the outside, so we've got a decent sort of finish there. While it's there, I'll just do a zoom in on that again, so you can get a closer view on that. Just try and tweak the focus. Oh, I'm too far. Oh, there it is. So that's what the surface looks like close up. It's not quite like wood. It's almost, you know, like the cheap chipboard you get for construction. It's almost a bit like that, but on a finer scale. So you've got strands going in all sorts of directions. So it hasn't grown like wood with a grain direction, so to speak. It's a bit more random. But I quite like that. I think it's quite interesting. But yeah, definitely gone a bit too thin on that one. Right, so to finish that last little stub off at the bottom, my next sort of secret weapon is this. It's a sanding arbor, and again, it was made from one of those offcuts. So I've got a spigot on already, and I've just drilled a hole in it and put a Velcro sanding arbor in there. And if I start off with a piece of 80 grit, which is what I've got on there, that will cut that back pretty quick. Get the dust hood in place. So you can see there I've got a short 1/2 inch diameter spigot there to get rid of. So on this I can turn the lathe up to the full speed it's on, which is 1800 RPM. I'm just angling that back a bit so I can see what I'm doing. I'm sanding near the edge of the pad because it's moving faster there. And also if I'm sanding near the edge of the pad, I know the pad isn't sanding away somewhere else where I don't want it to. I'm controlling where I'm sanding because I'm near the edge. So pretty quickly, that stub is gone. Oh, that's gone through the bottom as well. There wasn't a lot left at the bottom either. But had that succeeded, I could go down to a 120 grit pad now and refine that. I should have left a bit more of that foot in place. But yeah, I can go down to 120 grit. Oop. One's didn't want to hold on. I think my Velcro is probably wearing out on this one. Let's try it again. Yeah, it's starting to slip, that one. I've got a couple of these. When I'm teaching, I've got more than one, so they can put them on a couple of lathes, or 2 or 3. I've got 3, in fact. So they can put them on 3 different lathes all at once. That's better. And then sand at 120. And if I want sand at 180, etc., I can go down through the grits, smooth that off. I'm not going to polish the bottom of that. I've got, as you can see, there's a hole in the bottom now because I've just gone through it with the sanding process. But hopefully I'll switch over to a camera over here. Just turn the extractor off. So I'll switch to this one and we'll put it up here. So that's what it's supposed to look like, minus the hole. But yeah, there's a little bit on the side where it's gone through, and you see it's gone through on the bottom as well. I've just gone too thin. As I said at the start, your constraint is the amount of material that's there, and I've just taken off a little bit too much. But with a little bit more care, I could have just taken less off. But in terms of how it turned, it's turned like a fairly dense wood, a fairly hard wood. Cut okay with the gouges. It did take the tip off my gouge sort of moderately quickly, so harder than some woods definitely, but certainly not the worst thing I've ever turned. But I quite like the effect of the patterning on the surface, and
oh yeah, got fabulous grain.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something different. Yeah. I mean, you could even try and colour it. I've never tried it myself, but yeah, it did occur to me that might take colour nicely, so I might give that a try sometime. But
right. That's what was running through my head, was dyeing it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to sort of experiment with that, I think, and see what can be done.
That's what I was waiting for, to see what kind of finish he would put on it.
Right.
Yeah, sanding, sealer and wax is all I've used on that.
Yeah.
It's got a reason. I mean, I don't normally go for high gloss. That's got the sort of the level of sheen I would go for, and sanding, sealer, wax is about there. Where I do use high gloss is when I put colours on, and you want depth of colour there, and the high gloss surface gives the colour more depth. So that's where I might use a sort of a lacquer and burnish that to a sort of almost a glass finish. But on this, sanding, sealing, wax is quite quick and gives me the sort of level of shine I want. So, but yeah, that's sort of start and finish.
Yeah, start and finish.
Those.
Wow.
Something else to have a go at.
I'm gonna have to find me some. And I think those are very interesting.
Actually, Paul,
Very interesting.
how much does it cost you to buy that from Germany?
Sorry, can you say it again?
I said, actually, how much does it cost you to buy that from Germany?
They worked out each round about £3 to £4, so that's probably about $6, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I bought 20. I thought I'm not going to pay shipping from Germany and buy 2. So I bought 20, and it worked out not a lot per unit, sort of shipping wise. And I think, yeah, for that, including shipping, it was, yeah, as I say, probably three, somewhere between £3 and £4 each. I think they're £3 each, and then you pay the shipping on top. So $5 plus, let's say, 50 cents to $1 shipping or something like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, if you can find them your side of the pond, you might find that because they haven't traveled quite so far, they might actually be cheaper.
Right. Didn't go from South America to Europe to
Exactly.
back
Yeah.
to-
Yeah.
right. So
Your shop has to smell great right now. That's all I've been thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, I
Oh,
can't
I've
smell
been
the wood,
thinking
but
about
you certainly smell the finishes. Yeah, the polish. Yeah, the wax and
Right.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Paul, could you explain what cellulose sanding sealer is for those that are unfamiliar with that product?
Smells good.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Could you explain cellulose sanding sealer?
Okay, yeah.
For those over here that's not familiar with it.
Yeah, you can get really 3 different flavors of sanding sealer. One is what they call a spirit sanding sealer, which is shellac based and what we call methylated spirits. I think you just call it denatured alcohol, don't you?
Right.
That's what you get in spirit based sanding sealer. It's quite slow to dry, but it does give you a reasonably good result. You just got to be a bit more patient. Me being the impatient type, I'll go for the cellulose based sanding sealer. Again, it's the chestnut or Fiddies or 1 or 2 other brands do it. And I dilute it a bit. It's quite thick as it comes out of the pot, so I dilute it a bit, sort of maybe 1/3 thin as 2/3 sanding sealer, just so it flows better and it also soaks into the wood better, I think. So I thin it a bit for that reason. But yeah, you put that straight onto the bare wood as your base, let that dry, cut it back, flatten it basically, and then wax polish on the top. And it's a very good base for the waxed polish because if you put wax straight onto the wood, it sort of soaks into the wood and you don't get much of a build on the surface. It's a lower key finish. It's less of a shine. Putting the sanding sealer on first, you're creating a buffer and the wax is sitting on the surface and creating more of a shine. So that's the reason I use it and in that combination. You can also get an acrylic sanding sealer, and where I'm playing with acrylic paints and doing colouring, then if I'm going to use a sanding sealer on something that's got other parts that are acrylic paints, etc., colours, then I'll use an acrylic sanding sealer on those. Now all of these sanding sealers, you could buy them in a tin in liquid form, or you could buy them in a spray can. So you can put it on either way. The spray cans are more expensive, basically. You're going to get through more of those for the same surface coverage. Buying it in a pint sort of tin or thereabouts, it's going to be cheaper and you'll get a lot more mileage out of one of those for the same amount of money. Okay.
Great.
Any other
Derek.
questions?
Thank you.
Yes, there was another question on. Thank you all. Just got a pizza brought to me, homemade. There was a question. There was a question on your life center with it being with the point being removed and or being ground off, and why you chose that method.
Let me take that one out of the lathe. I'll show you what I've done. I'll try and do it so you can see what's happening. What I'm using there, it's a multi-tip center. It's an Axminster, again, an Axminster one, multi-tip center, and it comes with several different centers. You get point centers, cup centers, and the ring center. Now this one here is a standard ring center. You see it's still got the point in it. I'll put it over there against the white background, you probably see it better. So that's got the point still there. This one, it was one of those, but as you can see in the middle, I've ground the point back. So it's pretty much flat and below the surface of the ring now. So when I put that against the wood, the ring makes contact, but not the point. So I'm just limiting even more the amount of penetration there by right. Point away. So that's all I'm trying to achieve, is having to take less material away when I clean up the bottom. So that's my objective. On a normal bowl where I've got plenty of wood to play with, I would use a standard, usually a ring center still, because I quite like ring centers. But I would use a standard one with a point and allow enough wood to make sure I turn that away when I finish the bottom. With this one, I knew I was playing with sort of not that much material, less than I thought, as it turned out. And because of that, I was trying to minimize what I needed to take off the bottom. Now, the bit at the bottom, I could have probably turned a bit less away and not gone through, but the bit on the side is too late anyway. But
Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, that's what I was trying to achieve with that center with the reduced point or with the moved point. The ring is still going to hold it, and if while I've got that piece mounted initially in the chuck, I press the ring into the surface, it just leaves a very faint impression. Well, it certainly did in this because it's quite a hard material. So it just leaves an impression of the ring, so I can use that for recentering, and hopefully that will get it realigned. I mean, with this one, I think because of the packing and the padding I was using on the inside, I think that was my problem, not the fact that I didn't recenter it on the ring, because I did realign it on the mark that was there, but it just didn't run true because of the packing I think I got behind it. So that's just the way it is.
Okay. Well, hopefully that answers the questions that were being thrown around in the chat about it. So,
okay. Any other questions?
folks, anybody else got any other questions?
No, nothing to say, but you know what? It was a very enjoyable evening.
Thank you.
Thought it
It
was.
was an excellent demo. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Paul.